What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Jake Gyllenhaal film, Life. Life stars Ryan Reynolds, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Rebecca Ferguson, and tells the story of a group of astronauts who are currently inhabiting the International Space Station when a new sample from Mars arrives. Upon examining the sample, they find the first ever proof of life outside of Earth. It is a single-cell organism that begins to grow and stimulate. Of course, something horrible happens and the organism escapes, and of course it's hostile, and they're forced to use their scientific minds and the location that they are in to try and handle this creature before it could escape and possibly get to Earth. The one thing about this film that it does so well, and is by far the best aspect of it, is the direction. Daniel Espinosa directed this film, and he does a phenomenal job with it. The camera work throughout this movie is amazing. He utilizes the zero gravity of the space in an interesting way for the script. The characters are always floating. There's never a scene in this movie where gravity exists, and it makes for a very, very interesting element throughout the story. When you're being chased and it's a thriller and there's a monster involved, it's really cool that they aren't running, that they have to like float and grab things and slide around. It was a very entertaining way to watch, but the direction is where it really shined. Espinosa used the camera almost as if it was another character that was floating in the zero gravity, showing us what was happening. Sure, there were sequences that were very handled, the camera had very specific motions and movements and placements, but the opening scene of this movie is the one that I think really needs to be talked about, because it is one take. The whole thing is one take when you're first introduced to the astronauts, and it feels like the camera is floating around with them, and it was a beautiful sequence, and throughout the whole movie, the direction is really good, and it helps build the suspense, and it helps add more and more character to the film itself. I know Life is being marketed as a horror film, however I think it is more of a thriller and a suspense movie. There are certain sequences that have a lot of suspense and get your heart pumping a little bit, but the whole movie isn't really scary in any way. All of the performances from the cast were good. No one was great. The script didn't really give anyone the opportunity to be great. They all handled what they were supposed to do in their specific character development formats, and they did it as well as they could, and I don't think anyone was particularly bad, but I also don't think there was a shining star that stood out. To go along with the great direction of this film, the set design was also phenomenal. The sets of within the International Space Station were really cool, and especially added in with the zero gravity again, them floating around through all of these different locations looked amazing, and it made for a very cool set to have a monster movie take place in. I realize this isn't the first monster alien movie we've ever had in space, but this is the first one that, to me, had an actual realistic feel to it. This takes place more or less in modern day. I don't think they actually give a year, but it feels like that. And the way that they handle that aspect of it made it really interesting, because the way the alien is portrayed, the way the alien's found, the way everything goes down, feels less science fiction-y. It feels like this is something that could actually happen. All of the effects in the movie looked really good, including the alien itself, which I have to give props to whoever designed the alien, because it doesn't really look like anything I've ever seen before in a film. It had a very interesting design, and the way that it moved was really cool, and I'm not going to spoil what it looks like or anything like that. I will probably include a screenshot of something from the trailer that is far from what it looks like in the actual movie, but it was a really cool design. The presence of this alien, since the movie felt so realistic, made it that much more interesting. We don't learn a lot about it, but that unpredictability, because we don't understand the strengths that it has, makes it that much more suspenseful when it is present in sequences. As I said previously, this movie doesn't have the most original concept. We've seen aliens in spacecraft horror films before. Obviously the most comparable one is the original Alien, and I think that this movie does have enough changes that it doesn't feel like a rip-off. However, it also has a lot of very similar things to movies that it is like, and while it does do a lot of things really well, particularly in the visual category and direction and effects, I think that in the horror and thriller aspect of it, it falls behind heavily. There's only 2 or 3 sequences in this movie that I really was invested in suspense-wise. I was actually like, oh, what's going to happen? I don't know. Because the biggest issue with this film is its lack of character development. This movie has an extremely fast pace. This movie flies by. And it flies by because in the beginning, it doesn't really take the time to give us any development of these astronauts. We get very generic development for them, if we get any at all. And then once the alien becomes present in the film, everything just begins to just fly by. And you don't have any real care for the characters that you're seeing on film being terrorized by this alien, and it brings all of the suspense down that extra notch since you don't really care about them. I'm gonna give Life a C. I think that this movie does have a few sequences that work in a suspenseful manner. However, it's not very scary, and it's not very, like, making your heart beat out of your chest in any way. It has some cool CGI, it's extremely well directed, and it's got solid performances. If you enjoy thrillers or alien movies, I would definitely recommend it, but I don't think that this is a movie that really is necessary to see in theaters. This is definitely a, oh, you can rent it or watch it on Netflix type of film when it comes out. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Life, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and I hope to see you guys later.